Welcome to On the Precipice MUFON Contct radio program with your hosts, CJ Arabia and Richard Bassett, where discovery, disclosure, and evolvement meet. We are on the cusp of evolutionary realizations, technologies, and awareness. So come along and share in the adventure of discovery of who we really are and where we are going.
Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day.
Wherever you're at. Hey, CJ, how are you?
I'm good, Richard. How are you? Still getting over multiple colds.
I'm sorry, a little bit of freeze there. You're getting over multiple what now?
Colds. I had like kind of back-to-back.
Oh, wow.
So now I've got this sexy voice. So thanks for understanding.
Well, we appreciate it. I'm glad that you're We're here in the canyon over by Loma Linda and Colton and Redlands. We have fog in the morning, last 3 mornings, up until maybe 10 o'clock. And, you know, it's in the 50s because we're the lower San Bernardino, San Gregorio mountain. So it's really been cool. And
we've had the 50s here in the valley too, the San Fernando Valley for a couple of weeks now. We've been in the 50s. We've been in the high 50s lately, but we were like 51 one morning.
Yeah, nice time of the year for everybody, starting with the, you know, this festive time and seasons and all that. So what do we have going?
Well, we got so much going on. I mean, well, first of all, we got all the usual MUFON news, right? I mean, MUFON's always looking for field investigators. If you're interested in being a field investigator, please reach out to us. We've got our email address, which is cjandrichard@gmail.com. You can just go to the MUFON website as well, MUFON.com, and join and sign up. There's also the find a chapter page where you can find your local MUFON chapter, whatever state you're in, whatever set, you know, if you have a big state like California has even various chapters you can go to. You know, we need your cases too. Like if you can hear me right now, I would love if you would just take MUFON.com website and share it on your social media somewhere and just let people know that this is a place you can go to report a UFO or contact whatever's going on with you. Because there's a lot of people that don't know. And I know that we have field investigators that are always asking me for more cases. And so I just want to encourage people, share us with your friends. If you know who we are, awesome, fantastic. There's a lot of people who don't know about MUFON, who have seen something, who have experienced something, and don't even know that there is a place you can report it where actual human being will call you, email you, investigate your case, and you'll be able to ask them questions about what you saw. And so I don't know. I would just love to get the word out about MUFON to the people who don't know about MUFON. So thanks to anybody who heard me and decided to go ahead and share the MUFON homepage on your social media. And then a couple of Facebook groups. You know, we've been doing a lot of stuff. Richard and I are in field investigators for Southern California MUFON, but we talked to Shay is the state director for Alaska Northern Lights chapter MUFON. And they're going to start doing monthly Zoom meetings. And anyone in the world who wants to go to these Zoom meetings can. So if you're on Facebook, go to MUFON Alaska Northern Lights chapter. There's, I think, a group or a page or both even. Or just use our email address, CJ and Richard, and we'll guide you toward where you want to get. But there's so many great chapters of MUFON all over the country. And I just highly encourage you, if you're on social media, check Instagram, Facebook. They might have a page of your group near you, and you can follow them and show your support and find out about. Most of the chapters have some kind of a meeting that takes place that you can be invited to, whether it's online or in person. And that kind of brings me to, so Southern California MUFON, we haven't had a meeting since before our state director, Earl Grey Anderson, passed away, but that is all about to change. We're going to have an online Zoom, like a town hall. Paul Hynek's going to speak. Stephen Bassett, our friend, is going to be there. And that's going to be on November 16th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And if you're listening to our show, I'll give you a little spoiler alert. which is basically that we are going to starting in January, on the first Sunday of every month at 2:00 p.m. Pacific time, Southern California MUFON is going to start having a Zoom meeting. And our goal is to raise enough money to get a space and have periodic in-person meetings with speakers and have events. But right now, the funds we have, we're going to stick with Zoom because we can afford it right now. And also we can book some cool speakers that maybe aren't in our, like Bassett is all over the country. He's here, he's there. So, we can book a few people that aren't in the area. So that'll be great. And I just want everyone to know you're all invited. Southern California MUFON, we have a Facebook page. Just Google us. I think it's like facebook.com/SoCal MUFON. And then we're also on Instagram. And we have our own website, SoCalMUFON.com. And we write articles. You can see all our field investigators, have a little bio there. And I don't know, we're going to be putting flyers for our meetings. So just wanted to get the word out. Share them with your friends, especially all of you who used to come to our in-person meetings. Now you can invite all of your friends because we're going to be online. And the first meeting will be, like I said, November 16th, kind of a little bit of a town hall. We're just going to group, gather, share some information. I think there will be a Q&A, so people will get to ask Bassett some questions. And also those of us with Southern California MUFON, you're gonna be able to ask us questions about what's going on, where's our meeting? We're gonna answer your questions in person on the Zoom. So I'm very excited about that, that we're gonna be all getting back together again soon. And I think that's it. I'll throw it back to you.
One of the things I wanted to comment, because it was a very important. So we are really interested, not only on this show, but in MUFON, hearing from people. So not only do we like you to send stuff to the show, to CJ and I, and we'll put up our email address there. But for those of you who've had sightings, the MUFON website allows you to make sightings. Those of you who've had experiences with Contct, abduction, whatever you want to call it, we really encourage that. We also have a number of groups that we'd like to share with you if you're interested in, online groups that you can go to. Those of you who want to talk to somebody about the situation. So it's very important because MUFON are citizen-based research and investigation correlated people who are very passionately interested in this whole subject. And we all know, and we're going to talk a little bit with our guests about this, but disclosure, aliens, where we're at in the world, that's not going to come from somebody who claims to be Big Brother, Big Daddy, Big Mother, whatever you want to call them. It comes from the people. This is a grassroots, people-oriented organization, and that's the only way that we're going to get these things done. And we really appreciate people being involved. But I can't underscore the fact that MUFON, one of the oldest investigative citizen board investigative bodies, are there, and they've been there every day. We have all kinds of information. So please, anytime, any place, just let us know what you think and what you feel. So I really appreciate that. So anything else?
Good job, Richard. No, yeah, exactly. I just want people to know, like, I want to say operators or field investigators are standing by. Like, there's nothing they want to do more than investigate your case and talk to you. And you might think it's just a little thing. It's just a small thing you saw. All right, well, if it's anomalous, if it doesn't fit in the boxes of an airplane, of a satellite, and you want to know what it is, report it to MUFON. If we figure out what it is, we'll tell you. And if we don't, we'll tell you that too. So yeah, I just thought great points, Richard.
Anything else before I move on?
No, I know we got a big show planned, so just moving things along.
So just as you all know, we call ourselves on the precipice for a reason, and we're on the cusp of many, many things, whether it's, disclosure, discovery, development, realizing evolutionary changes, technologies, or whatever. We are on the cusp, and we here and MUFON want to be part of that. And our guest that's coming up is a part of that. So it's a very important place and time for us all to be. And, we were talking backstage before we came about the 3-Eye Atlas and all the things that are related to that. And one of the things our guest said that was extremely important to me is it's brought more awareness. it's brought more expansion of possibilities and ideas. And that's what I mean about being on the cusp. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, so one of the things I wanted to do, because we love to do this, I wanted to give an update because I just think it's cool. Recently, we had this on a podcast that we have, and this is Dr. Beatrice Villarreal and on the Ross Cohart Reality Check News Nation program. And the update that I wanted to give you is obviously just to give you an idea about what this Basco project was. With our segment with Beatrice Villarreal, she has a project called Project Basco, and it's research involving transit reflections from temporal space type objects that were captured from 1948 to the late 50s by astronomers at the Palomar Observatory. This research reviewed 300,000 plus glass slides that contain images from low Earth orbit involving objects that were captured in long exposure of 45 to 50 minutes in duration that were not detected in subsequent slides. Again, either hours or days later. These temporal and transient objects contain features that were consistent with artificial structure as opposed to any natural occurring thing, which was a really cool thing about it. The research that was done was recently peer reviewed, and it passed the scientific scrutiny and has been officially published in 2 scientific publications. Again, we're talking about huge, but just to let you know, this is one of the objects that was referenced. And the reason why I put this up is you can see these little blue plates. And what happens in a number of these plates that they were able to view, you see how much they're in a line like that? That was one of the anomalous things that they were able to detect, because stars, by the way, in pre-satellite days in our space in the 50s, didn't line up like that. So they thought that was anomalous. And the next plate was even more significant because it shows really what they were talking about. So if you look at that, these are 2 identical plates, albeit different time frames. The one that's on my left has a bunch of stars. But if you look to the right, there's a couple of the dots that are not there anymore. And that's the reason why that's important. And this exposure took between 45 and 50 minutes. So if they were passing through, you'd see streaks, you'd see all this kind of stuff. But they were stationary and isolated there. And the reason why this is really cool is because these 2 scientific publications published the results of this finding, which is astronomical, because the idea and the hypothesis is these are artificial anomalous objects that were in our orbit at times when everybody was seeing UFOs. They were seeing the stuff that was happening in 1952 over Los Angeles and all other things that were happening. And so these 2 scientific publications, the scientific report and then this publication of Astronomical Society of the Pacific, published these. And I just think groundbreaking stuff in terms of how in science, because that's what MUFON's all about. We're continually to move more, and science continues to help us to prove the existence of what we already know and already believe. So I just thought it was a really
great.
Really
it is really cool. I was following her work for a while on those, and they're really amazing. The images are pretty amazing.
And she, I don't know, and she's all over different podcasts about just what the community, not only the scientific community, international community, just like we had Francisco Moro on last time. His organization, that international organization, he even spoke about her during our last episode. The point is it's really been a boost, if you will, just like we were talking about the Avi Loeb and the 3i Atlas thing.
Right.
I mean, it seems like science.
It's the conversation. It's getting the conversation going.
And the timing of things are all coming forward. So anyway, what I also wanted, because we love to share updates, I also want to share a recent video, because these are ones that we have as interest. And let's see if I can do this the right way and share it with everybody.
Even if you do it the wrong way, that's okay.
Well, we'll see, right? It's like anything else.
Well, it's cool. I hope it works out, because it's cool.
All right, so here we go. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna share this screen because I really want you guys to see this. See, we have it here. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that. So that's the anomaly. This was done years ago, and it was floating there, and all of a sudden you'll see it. It's a cylinder, and it takes off. It's boom. And so, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that this was in Russia, and it was probably in the either 70s, I'm sorry, 60s or 70s. But again, these things have been going on the whole point, and one of the reasons why I share it. First of all, it's cool that we share with others, and we do things that are captured. A number of them are significant, but this aspect of our subject of ufology has been going on not only obviously for decades, but centuries, but multiple thousands of years. We have ancient texts, ancient writings, ancient paintings, ancient tapestries that depict all kinds of things like this. So I think it's cool that we are able to share this with our people, and
it is.
Right. So one of the things we also like to do is we like to suggest and recommend just different publications and books, because we think it's important as people who are scientific based that we continually expand our information and our horizon. And one of my passions is and a book besides the abduction phenomena and his work, Passport to the Cosmos. One of my favorite books. There was a reason why, too. I also put it back on. We had talked about it before because we're going to talk to our guests about Dr. Mack. But again, abductions, where they come from, who they are, all the people that were involved with it. We want to recommend these things. I think you'll like it if you read it. It's a good book. And I just think it's something that we want to continually promote in terms of education.
Oh, yeah. I love books. I'm always reading a bunch of books.
So now, just before we get started, just like to introduce Stephen Bassett to our program. Stephen, are you there?
There he is.
There he is. Is this a good picture of you? Yeah, that's a really good picture of you, by the way.
They're better.
They're better.
Welcome
to our program. And I will like to tell you that, Steve, you were generous and gracious enough to, at the busy schedule, to come onto our show and
thank you.
Yeah, be with us and talk to us about what we really are passionate about, and all those areas that I was talking to you about being on the cusp of where we're going, whether it's discovery, disclosure, impending things that are coming, or congressional stuff. So welcome. Thanks for being with us. CJ, is there anything that you want to say? Because we got like a bunch of questions and a bunch of things for you. Plus, I know you got a lot of things you want to say too. I'm sorry, CJ. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's okay, honey. No. I'm interested in seeing what he says. I mean, I know we started talking before the show. Like, he's just fascinating. He's, always got the latest information because he talks to everybody. Like, you're just with everybody. And I think you're one of the people most people want to talk to. So I'm just excited that you're here. And thanks for coming down to talk to us today.
I am always available to help out a fellow member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.
Thank you.
We're going to get into that. So I'd like to ask you a couple sort of personal background questions before we get started. Is that okay, Steve?
Yeah, but I have to warn you, my life is not that interesting.
You know what? I bet it is. So one of the things before I get going, I'm just going to have to talk. So Georgia Tech, the Yellow Jackets, I just want to make sure, because I'm a Florida State guy, so I mean, and then you went to a really good school that in St. Petersburg. So are you from Florida?
I spent a lot of years in Florida. My father was Navy. He was stationed there a number of times. And then I went up to Tech for a couple of years and eventually finished up at Eckerd down in St. Petersburg.
Right.
With a degree in physics. But I graduated finished up really in the end of 69, early 70, and in the middle of a lot of chaos, because when I wasn't in Florida, I was in DC. So I've been back
Right.
and forth. I have family there, and I've lived in DC and for many years, and I'm just in the middle of it all.
So let me ask you a question. It was funny because, and if you don't mind to go back a little bit. So just tell us about young Steve. You said that I'm really interested. Your dad, was he a career Navy man?
Yeah, my father was career Navy. He retired as a warrant officer
And what did he do for the Navy?
Well, he was pretty much he always worked in the medical, I guess you could say corps, that section. He was actually at Guadalcanal. I think he was on one of the hospital ships, but he might have gone ashore. He never talked about it. That's not unusual. So, but he was in Guadalcanal, and he was in the Pacific until the war ended, and then came back to. It took months to get back to Mare Island, and he was immediately assigned to Bethesda, and he met my mother almost within weeks, and wasted no time. And so that's what started me.
Get into business.
Hey, so let me ask you, and the only reason why I asked this, my dad was a career Air Force guy. And so one of the things as a youngster that happened with us, we lived overseas, we lived in a number. So how was it? Because I have my own thoughts, as a youngster. So how many times did you move when you were a kid?
I don't want to complain. God knows it. My father was not what do you call it? I forget the name of it, but there's a top level track officers. You got your lieutenant, your commanders, all the way up to admiral.
Sure.
He was the warrant officer track.
Right.
And they get removed more. And so we moved a lot. And there's a reason that military brats, as we're called, end up going in the military, because that's all in a sense. You don't really get connected to communities because you're not there long enough, and unless you really make an effort, particularly the parents. But a kid, what does a kid know? And so you grow up in a certain way, and there are a lot of commonalities in all military brats. And but when I almost went to the Air Force Academy, I was accepted, but there was a mistake on my medical exam, and the class closed out. Otherwise, I would have gone in the Air Force Academy in 1964. But in this case, when I finally got going in college, it's the middle of the Vietnam War. It was the middle of the civil rights movement. It was it was assassinations and very, very intense activism and everything else. And I was a very immature kid, and so I got overwhelmed by it, frankly, and really didn't know what the hell to do with myself. I had a degree in physics and didn't know what to do. What I needed to do was go get a PhD. And I think something inside of me, somewhere down there, sort of knew if you managed to pull that off, and I was not in good shape, you were going to be an average physicist, in which case you would have been like taking care of the equipment, polishing up, the equipment stuff, and so I didn't go any further, and I just sort of drifted off into life.
That time seemed to really affect you, though. I mean, because with your work in lobbyists and Congress and all that, it sounds like that turbulent time. And stop me now. I'm just trying to see what made the man that is Steve Bassett. It sounds like that actually did have a lot of influence on what you eventually are doing. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I came of age.
Yeah.
You come of age just after you leave high school, basically. And you either go to college or you get a job, and you go 18, 19, 20. This is when you're coming of age and trying to figure out and your parents are hoping you're going to move out, what you're going to do with your life. It's an incredibly important time. I came of age in 1964, and that continued all the way through that decade. And it was let me tell you, tune in, turn on, drop out. The sex revolution, drug revolution, all kinds of activism was going on, and I just was not. I didn't have the maturity and the sophistication to deal with it, and I just sort of wandered around, not knowing exactly what to do. It was a mess. A lot of people had that problem. A lot of people turned to drugs because of that. Drugs, it just wasn't a fun thing. They were turning to it because they were not in good shape. I did not. Ultimately, I turned to sports and stuff and tennis and things like that. So it definitely shaped me. And what it did was it sent me off into sort of an unspecified space, kind of orbiting, life, not actually able to decide where to park down. And a lot of people in that era got it worse than I, including the ones that went to Vietnam. They went to Vietnam and then they came back.
Which added a lot of other issues, but especially
Sure.
military people who were background.
So the result is when I finally figured out what I wanted to do in life and was prepared to absolutely commit to it, which is what you need to do to have the fullest possible life. You have to commit to something intensely. When I finally did that, it turns out that all of the exposure I had to activism over those many, many years, watching it, participating to some degree, there was a reason. And the reason why my heroes were the activists. They're the ones that I sort of admire and go, oh, yeah, that's really great. Not sports figures, not Nobel Prize winners, but the activists. Not surprisingly, when I finally found my calling, it ended up being activism. It came late. And I'm lucky because all the sports I did to keep myself sane bought me a lot of years. And so here I am, practically 80, doing what I want to do for as long as I want to do
good
it.
at it.
Wow.
That's the long and the short of my life. As you can see, there's no doc there. There's no biography.
We'll see, right? No, I'm only kidding. Hey, a lot of folks this. So let's take a second to go into the idea of the subject that we are wanted to focus on. So have you ever, I'm just curious, have you ever had a sighting that you would consider anomalous or have you ever had any type of anomalous contacts, experience that initially, and then we'll get into why you ultimately got into this advocacy in this particular subject. So please, any sightings or contact in your whole life?
He's a unicorn. No, he's a unicorn. He is someone who fully believes in UFOs and has seen nothing.
Well, I don't believe in UFOs, dear.
Well, they're real.
I became convinced of the evidence, just like I'm convinced that relativity is the current fundamental theory of space-time. I believe is a term we need to stay away from as much as we can. I chose this issue, and I ultimately chose as an activist because intellectually, I did study physics. I might have gotten a PhD. I was a lot smarter back then than I am now. I'll tell you that. The point is that it was obvious to me on common sense when I was a teenager. And then as more information came out and this thing turned up, it was clear that it was clearly an extraterrestrial or non-human phenomena. But so what? I for whatever reason, I didn't go, oh, I got to join MUFON. I got to do this. No, I just kept drifting on and orbiting, right? Just going around and around. But it was always there. As you know, it's been coming out steadily in one way or another for the last 80 years. So I early on, hell, when I read Betty and Barney Hill's story in the magazine in '66, I'm going, of course, they were abducted by these non-humans. I had no bias. I had no religious bias. I had no intellectual bias. I had no reason to, how would you say, to just put aside what I was hearing and seeing and not give it a proper scrutiny. And so it was not easy for me to jump in, not hard to jump into this issue at 49. I was absolutely certain there was an extraterrestrial presence. But what I didn't understand was why hasn't the government confirmed this? And then, of course, while I was up at John Mack's operation in Cambridge is when I realized, because politically and for national security, they have deliberately chosen not to, as well as deliberately chosen to prevent us from figuring it out or concluding. And that this ultimately, by the time I got involved in 1996, was no longer acceptable. It may have been for a long time, but by 96, it was simply bad policy, dangerous policy, and everything that's happened since 96 has only confirmed that.
So you if I understand, so you are a science person. And you are a person who's apparently have been fascinated with science since you were a kid. Now, whether that was shows, whether it was your dad, whether it was your own curiosity, the way you looked at things, and that sort of laid a foundation. And then it sounds like coupled with that, your experience through those turbulent times in the 60s and 70s and onward, obviously, and just the whole idea about where we were at in terms of our paradigm, both as a country, militarily, and then in a government sense. And then you have all these issues that relate to what has evolved in this particular subject. And maybe this is a little bit deeper as we go on. I mean, this idea of conspiracy, this idea of secrecy, this idea as it conflicts or combats democracy and the need of the people to govern themselves. And, in a democracy, and again, I'm going off, but in a democracy, secrecy is an exception, not a rule. And, you go on past that, and then you have all these advocacies speaking about different points of view and all that. So it's an interesting mixture of who you are. And that's the idea about this conversation. We're not trying to figure you, we're not trying to dissect you, because we couldn't do that anyway, because you are who you are. But it's interesting to see what, not only your passion, but what makes you tick. Where are you going? Because so for instance, I mean, because you said something when CJ mentioned, so what is your thoughts about who they are, or what they are, or what it is, or in terms of this UFO, UAP, these beings, and Ken, this goes into Dr. Mack's work a little bit, but what's your thoughts? What's your personal feelings about that?
Okay. I was never a practicing scientist, but science is what interested me. And after that, I read and followed it, but not as a practicing scientist. I never had that career. I went off and did a bunch of other stuff, but that really didn't amount to much. However, I've now been in this field for 30 years. I've had a full career because I've managed to stay alive. And so I've had a full career. So I think anything that happened before I entered this field, I'm not interested in it. I don't care anymore. And I don't want anybody else to care. Just, the last 30 years. And when I got into this field, ultimately, I knew I was going to be an activist pretty quickly within a short amount of time. And I figured that all out while I was volunteering in Cambridge with PEER, John Mack's group, Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, which is no longer here, but was an important thing. And of course, John isn't either, and that's very sad. So I am an activist, pure and simple. Now, I did call my organization Paradigm Research Group. It wasn't just to be difficult, but I'm not a research organization. Why did I call it that? Because when I got the idea to register as a lobbyist, because nobody else was stupid enough to do it, I called up a couple of organizations that were basically research that I knew some people. I said, look, I want to sign up as a lobbyist for you. I'm going to put you down as an entity that I'm working for. No cost. It's all free. It's amazing how much cooperation you can get when it's free. And so I had a number of these, up to 8 or 9, and that's why I called it Paradigm Research Group. But it has always been an activist entity, of which lobbying was a small proportion, right? Because you couldn't lobby this issue back in the 90s and the early aughts. I mean, you could call yourself a lobbyist, you could even be registered, but the idea you're going to be running around the hill lobbying, oh no, nobody wanted to talk to you. But I found ways to.
Well, the stigma too. You didn't want to get stigmatized either. So
there was,
Too late.
I didn't feel stigmatized, but the issue.
No, but everybody else would.
Yeah, sure.
You were trying to.
So what I have done is a whole range of things that all come under one heading, and that is activism. I'm a full-time activist. There really is not one. Well, let me do it this way. For most of the last 30 years, there simply wasn't one. There really never was one. But there were people that were doing things that had activist impact to some degree, and a little engagement of the government here and there and so forth. But in terms of every other movement had plenty of them. The environmental movement, civil rights movement, you name it, they had them, but not this. Why? Because you can't get paid any money. The government's not going to talk to you. The whole thing is stigmatized. So, but I didn't care. And so I've done 30 years of activism. I'm not a researcher. And researchers have, various protocols that they have to follow, or they're not really a researcher. So they have to stay within certain lanes. I am not a journalist. They have significant protocols they have to do and stay in, which is fine. All right. I'm not a witness, military type witness or government witness who have all kinds of restraints on them. All right. So the fact is, I don't have any constraints. That's one of why you need activists. No constraints at all. I can say whatever I want, when I want, how I want, and where I want. Hopefully I say things that are meaningful and helpful, but I'm going to say whatever the hell I want. And that has been missing in this field. So like in all the other areas of contention where people want the government to do something, there's lots of activists that are saying whatever they want to say and giving the government a hard time, but not in this issue. But now there are more activists, obviously. I mean, Danny Sheehan has been an activist his whole life, and now he's practically a full-time UAP disclosure activist. And there are some others that have actually signed up as lobbyists, so I'm not alone anymore. But most of the last 30 years, I was the only one, and it was not easy, to say the least, but I've loved every minute of it. I have no regrets at all.
Let me ask you before we get, I'm sorry, CJ, did you have something you wanted to say?
No. And I'm sorry earlier for switching the screens. I was trying to feature Steve in the spotlight, but for some reason I can't. It might be, I'm wondering if we get rid of your screen share, Richard, if it would let me feature Steve. I'm not sure.
Rotate him around, CJ.
It was like I was juggling and it was awkward, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow. But that's why the screen was jumping around. I was trying to make Steve big and us small, but I can't for some reason. So,
before I get away from Dr. Mack, I just want to have your opinion on something. Have you read Ralph Blumenthal's book, The Believer?
I have read some of it. I didn't get a chance to read it all, but go ahead.
No, it was just curious because, he and others who knew him really well, often wondered did he believe what he believed, and, he was involved with what he thought. So any thoughts on the book, Ralph Blumenthal, but ultimately what you think Dr. Mack would think about the book itself, and was he a believer?
Well, first of all, I actually mentioned to Ralph Blumenthal, and he's a great guy. I mean, I admire him greatly. I wish I could meet him. That the title bothered me a little bit because the term believer is a stigma term. Always has been. Mm-hmm. And he had a response that
I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah.
And he's a journalist. He's not this is not something he's been involved in his whole life, but he chose to get that subject and he put that in there. John, and he knew him much better than I. I didn't know him that well. I just happened to volunteer for his organization and met him, but I obviously followed him, read his books.
Right.
He was a true scientist. He was able to get at least one peer-reviewed, paper. It might have been two. It took a lot of effort to do that, but that kind of stopped when Harvard tried to throw him out. And he approached it that way. He was not prone to making absolute statements that were not yet backed up by the full power of the peer review process and so forth. But if you read between the lines, it wasn't hard to know or figure out that Dr. Mack knew damn well that the contactees we're dealing with maybe the odd exception, we're dealing with extraterrestrials or non-humans, and what they look like, and these ETs, I call them ETs because that's what they are, told these contactees they're from other stars. So as far as, and I believe the contactees more than I believe most other people, and so he understood that, but he also understood that the situation for these people, even with someone like him doing some research, but eventually that he got hammered on. I mean, he really did get hammered. He understood it was going to be a long time before the truth and science of Contct was going to be manifest and fully confirmed, and that these people were going to be in limbo until then. And he was absolutely right, because it's now 30 years later, and they're basically still in limbo, but they're close. They're getting close to having their day. We could talk about that. And so he was careful, and that's fine. He was not an activist. He didn't need to be an activist,
and he wasn't saying he was a believer either. And that's the funny thing about the book. Am I right? Am I wrong? I'm sorry to characterize it, because I know Ralph Blumenthal and others have mentioned the idea about that particular comment about the book. Whether was it an oxymoron? Was it a play on words? Was he really a believer? Or, you know, ultimately, I think it talked about the true scientist that he really was. And similarly to what you said, the science, when he looked at it and he delved into it, ultimately resonated with a picture that, as a scientist, I believe. Now I'm asking your opinion. Do you agree with that?
I think that Ralph used that title for a reason, based upon his engagement. And I really think that Ralph did not fully appreciate the history of the term and how it has carried along with this issue all these years. I don't think we got that, and that's okay. That's all right. The book is what matters. It was a paean to John Mack, and there'll be a movie one day. I mean, a real one, a narrative fiction. The work that he was doing should have led to a Nobel Prize, but obviously it didn't happen. So, but if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. If he doesn't write the book Abduction, and I don't read it at this critical point in my life when I'm having a massive midlife crisis and I can't afford to buy a red convertible, if I don't read that book, I probably can't do what I did, which is simply get rid of almost all my stuff, pack my car up, and drive to Cambridge from San Luis Obispo. I visited some people on the way, and set up with some of my remaining money to volunteer for an organization regarding Contct. Even now, when I look back on it, I'm going, was I guided here? Was there a third party involved in this? Because how in hell did I actually get myself to do it? What came together? Because by any reasonable assessment of my situation,
I can't imagine you doing anything else. I can't imagine what else you'd be doing.
Now, you bring up a very good point, and then this is my particular thought on what you're saying. It takes many pieces in a puzzle to complete the picture, and we all have a part in what we're trying to say or share or just have people understand. Now, it's their decision, obviously, whether they're going to believe what they see the puzzle. And so, obviously, your work, just like some of the science work and some of the other advocacy and some of the podcasts and some of the cases we talk about and the sightings and the science-based stuff that's evolving and the James Webb Telescope and all the things that are out there, it needs to have all these components, in my opinion, to further support not only your contention, but the contention that we tried to share on this show. And it sounds like, it may have taken all that time, but, you needed all those things to get to where you're at right now. Just my thought.
Well, yeah, look, there's a list of things that led me to make that decision in 1996. Okay. But I assure you, when I got involved, when I went down to DC, I did not think there was a chance in hell that this issue would still not be resolved 30 years later. I am still astounded that they were able, the managers of the Truth Embargo, God bless them, wherever they hang out, were able to pull it off. As time went by, I, again, was incredibly impressed by this. I still am. I'll say something I've said many times. I knew there were ETs here when I was 17. I didn't jump into it. I just knew it. Hey, it's obvious. Just read the news, okay? Read a few books, no problem. So when I got into this issue, the idea is we're going to finally see ETs, or they're going to... No, I got into it because I was irritated that the government was not telling the truth about this. 1996, which is almost 40 years after Roswell. And I went, this is kind of important. And there were some other aspects of it, too, that I didn't fully understand. I could have gotten into it for a while and then kind of lost interest or gone, what can I do? I realized how this was going to be brutal. It was not going to end too soon. After a while, I realized, okay, they're not letting go easily, except, and this is where it gets interesting. This is where if I could sit still and maybe get a little funding, because you just can't go off and do this, and write a book about the truth embargo, or get the money to do a film, a Ken Burns type film. The truth embargo, to me, is more interesting, more fascinating than the extraterrestrial presence, which we know quite a bit about, and they kind of do the same things all the time, right? We know what they look like, right, and so forth. We don't know for certain where they're from, and obviously there's plenty we'd like to know, but overall, we kind of got it, and it's like, what? What I began to understand is that something was going on that started in 47, right? In a sense, might have started a little earlier, a little later, but overall started at 47, that was way bigger than the presence of ETs itself. In other words, the modern era of the engagement of extraterrestrials wasn't just, they happen to be hanging out here, but in fact, it was a directly tie-in to the development of human civilization, where it had arrived circa 1945 and where it was inevitably going to go. And that things actually were tied together, that there was an agenda, right, that exceeded, milking cows of their blood or creating hybrids or whatever. There was a even larger agenda.
Right.
And that, once I got that more and more and more, and particularly in the area of nuclear arms race and nuclear weapons, I realized this is way bigger than just ET. There's other life in the universe, way bigger than that. In fact, it is a moment in time in the history of the human race, which is about 300,000 years, and the modern era is about 12,000 years, that is unprecedented, as profound as anything that's ever happened. It will be one of the most extraordinary events in all history. And once I sort of got that, I was fine. There was nothing that was ever going to take me out of this. Nothing that was going to stop me from doing this. And I was going to stick with it until the very end. It was not hard to do, but it took a little time, a few years before I started to get this. And that is the real great story. That story has not been told. The story of the truth embargo has not been told. And it's probably a $20 million flick minimal, and a very difficult book to write. But that's what really gets my attention.
Let me ask you this, because you bring up a remarkable point, and I think a lot of people who have done a lot of research in this. So we all realize that after World War II and what was happening, around the world politically, and the communists and all that Cold War stuff, and then the decision by our political people to create organizations that ultimately, whether it was the Air Force, the CIA, the Atomic Energy Commission, all that was going on, and it sort of morphed really fast from the late 40s through the 50s, and then at some point, and maybe this is where you're going, it turned to a secrecy issue and a counterintelligence issue in terms of discrediting and obfuscating and all that. And so I'm wondering, you bring up a point. So let's say what you're saying is true. And what I mean by that, the real question is not that they've been keeping a secrecy about a technology or whatever, but that the real story is who we really are and how long these things have actually been going on, and what the civilizations have been actually experiencing underneath in terms of the people in political power have known. And all of a sudden, the true story or the real story or the big story is something even much more significant. And have I got what you're saying? And therefore, the secrecy has only fueled that to hide the real overarching thing. Am I wrong about that? Or
well, let me help. Let me maybe phrase it a little differently. Real story, not a phrase I would use. Backstory, sure. there is a backstory to the modern era of contact that may go back, well, to the earliest days of civilization post-flood. Okay. What was going on prior to that? Who the hell knows? Though logically, using simple common sense.
Why not pre-flood? Why post-flood?
Well, he's probably saying pre-flood too, but he's only using that. I'm thinking. Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, there was a catastrophe that pretty much shook up the puzzle box. All right, and we had to start over. So what we know about pre-flood is limited, but common sense says that any species, including us, who had star-to-star capability, is going to explore the universe. That's what we would do, and they would see planets that, and the planets they'd be interested in would be the ones that have life. Obviously, there's only so much you can learn from a non-life planet, but there's a lot there. But you could pretty much master it pretty quickly. Life, on the other hand, infinitely complex, and probably untold numbers of examples. And so they could have easily visited our planet over, not the same ones now, but we could have had visitors checking us out, checking out the planet, research, going back as far as you want to go. Pick a number, 1 million, 10 million, 50 million. Okay, it's a long universe. Okay, so I think logically that happened. Then the flood comes, and that kind of slows things down. Whatever was going on is kind of pressed back, and then we start again, and very rapidly start developing tech and advance. In just 12,000 years, we've gone from the early basic civilizations that we know, and we always tend to underestimate them, to a spacefaring, quantum mechanics understanding, space-time understanding species in just 12,000 years. And so I think during that period, the planet becomes far more interesting than in any previous time. And so they're not just, here checking out the flora and the flora and the fauna, taking a little DNA from some reptiles or insects or whatever the hell. They are very much interested in this clearly developing sentient species that's going to be the sentient species on the planet. And I don't rule out the possibility that the reason we are here at all as humans is an intervention by the ETs. And we're getting now into fun stuff, and I don't mind getting into fun stuff. I don't put it out as fact, but I put it out is worth looking at.
Conversation.
In fact, there's a study that just came out. I'll refer to it in a second. I may even be able to show you the article because I'll do a screen share. But ancient aliens, there's almost no area of this issue that ancient aliens, which has done, I don't know how many, 100 or whatever,
20-something seasons,
has not touched on in some way, and generally gives you something to really think about. Sometimes it's a little too far off in left field, but there's a lot of very valuable information and insight on those shows. Kevin Burns did a fantastic job. I wish he was still here. And so the concept is really straightforward. We have finally learned, we've become aware that the number of Homo species was many. There was a time when we thought it were like 1 or 2, right? Because it's not easy finding those fossils. But we've been digging, and we dig and dig and dig, and we've been finding more and more Homo species. So at one time, there have been a number of them, many of them parallel and overlapping. And these are all moving forward in time. And some of them ended up as orangutans and monkeys and gorillas or whatever. And as we know, none of those particular results have computers or invent things. But one species did. And so the thinking is that they chose one of the Homo lines and interjected or dealt with their genetics in such a way to ensure that they were going to travel under a path that led to very powerful brains and ultimately sentience. And they only chose one because, as you can see, even amongst our own species, we have issues. You don't even want to think about another fully separate, how would you say, species that's not us, that's also got high technology. Now, there's an article just came out. This is another example. We've reached a point now where almost every aspect of the field is seeping into the mainstream turning up in an article there, that would never have turned up 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. But the stigma has dropped way down. The barriers are coming down. We're in a wholly different place. And so this stuff just kind of seeps out of the ground like oil, right? In that show, right? Hillbillies. And so here's an article that I can convey to you, that because I chronicle the press religiously. Let me do a quick share. I'm going to go here. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go up to.
I don't think you're. You know what? So Steve, I don't think you're going to be able to share your screen. Not that you won't, but I can go ahead and do it. But what I'd like to do, Bill, I'm sorry, Steve. I apologize because Bill just texted us. I want to go ahead and take our mid episode break. So in just a couple of minutes, we're going to go on a break, and then when we come back, I want us to not only talk about this whole real story or backstory or whatever you want to call it, and then we'll come back and talk about the rest of your stuff. Okay?
Great.
Sure.
All right. Hey, guys, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes, I guess.
Hold on to your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers. Act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
So you don't care about his life. You just care about covering up your little top secret stuff going on. Meanwhile, this man's dying. How dare you put these people in the military to defend us, and then when they come out, you just kick them to the curb.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you'd like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
Well, we're back. You know, I'm often, CJ, amazed how quick the first hour goes and that we talk and, when we get into these conversations. So, hey, Steve, so I think Bill has actually been able to fix the issue. So if you want to bring it up, if you can share your screen, if you still want to do it, because I want to finish that. And then I want to get into some of the paradigm research stuff and, some of the other questions that both CJ and I have so that we can close out our show. So you want to try to bring that stuff up and see what you have, and then I'll see if I can share.
He's a pro. He's been on KGRA before.
So,
do you see it?
You know what?
Coming up, there it is.
There it is right there.
Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. So when we start up, I'll immediately start talking about the articles I was referring to.
So
Go
you
for
know
it.
what? Go for it. We're up and running
Okay.
again.
Oh, okay. Hang on a sec. Well, this is my print media archive. And you can see the URL is news Paradigm Research Group news items.html. I've got 16,000 articles linked here.
Wow.
We're over 700 for 2025, which is not the biggest year, but still non-trivial. And I've just loaded up a bunch more, and I will be keeping these up to date, of course.
Wow.
But there's always developments going on, and I think I was talking earlier about the fact that the barrier and the stigma is pretty much gone, and this stuff just keeps seeping out, regardless of what the managers of the truth embargo would like to have happen. They do push back from time to time, but they cannot win. Essentially, they've lost the game. They just don't know it yet.
Right.
So here is what recently came out, and it's been written up in the New York Post. Alien DNA found inside humans. It was inserted into our genes. Bonkers new study claims. And then in the Vice, alien DNA may exist within humans. And in the Toronto Sun, and then another article here, alien DNA. This is about a study that has not been peer reviewed yet, but it's definitely a significant study. And it's remarkable for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that what this researcher, Dr. Max Rempel, has found is that he has identified DNA that is not, how can I put it? Essentially, DNA that's not, he has found individuals by looking for it who possess DNA that does not come from either of their parents.
Right. Isn't this the whole issue about this thought, especially in science recently? We're not able to determine or not determine whether that junk stuff that they have in there, because we don't have, Gary Nolan talks about this a lot. He claims, no, we haven't have any definitive research on alien DNA, but yet we don't even know what the rest of the stuff that we call junk even means, because in our mind, if it doesn't fit this box or this thing, then it's junk, but in fact, it may not be junk. And that's the stuff about these articles, because I've read a couple of these articles.
We just can't
I'm
read
not
it.
so sure about that. I think the junk DNA is another issue. But, here's the thing I didn't mention. He studied, and again, you can do this now. There was a time you could not do this. He basically studied people who claimed that they were being abducted, right? Contacted. Right, dealing with ETs. Right. And these are the ones he looked at and found there was DNA that came from neither parent. And so he's opened a window into the issue of possible genetic manipulation. Virtually the only study that's gotten this far that I am aware of, but there's other things that have been going on, but this one is closer to possibly making it to peer review. And so it's another example of how the fundamental issues that have been brought up over the decades that people dismissed or ridiculed, just about every damn one of them is eventually going to come back to bite them, because it's going to prove that it is legitimate. So this has supporting the idea of alien DNA, which then supports the idea that maybe the reason that we evolved as the lone sentient mega brain of the homos was because ETs wanted it. And you can imagine why they would. But in any event, there's that. This is just one of a number of developments.
Right. And I know that there was this other thought for some researchers who were trying to study that when they got people who they believe were hybrids, i.e. a mix that they're claiming to be of some species that are not from here, that was the idea. Let's study their DNA to see if we can somehow identify something like you have talked, because I think this is the premise of some of those hypotheses, that if there's something unknown there, then it could possibly be that. That's why I think Dr. Nolan mentioned that how would you know if it came from whoever? Because in order for you to know that, you'd have to have a species that you know is a species
You'd have to be familiar with that DNA.
Right. You'd have to have something that you can compare it to. I'm not saying that it's not there, and I'm not saying. So again, the good thing about it is it's the science, and we're looking at it, and it's becoming open. People are thinking about it. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, the issue of hybrid is tricky. Let me just get my camera right. There's some confusion there. If extraterrestrials have actually manipulated DNA in some of our ancestors in order to send it up on a path that would lead to the kind of brains that we have, which is what basically that's what separates from these other species, right?
Neanderthal, right?
It's the brain. It's pretty much the brain. What even the modern outcomes of monkeys and orangutans and so forth, it's the brain. There are other species with substantial brains. It's not simply limited to a bipedal entity like us. The brains of some of the cetaceous species are extremely advanced, right? They are very, very smart. They have tremendous brain capability. However, they live in the ocean. They live in water. And so no matter how powerful their brain is, they're never going to make a computer. But they could become we could actually have a relationship with them down the line. And they're working on it. They've been working on it for years. But there's only one species on land that has that kind of brain, and that is us. And so that is essentially creating what is sort of a hybrid. But that should not be confused with the hybrid reports coming from contactees, in which they are doing straight out alien human hybrids right now and gestating them in boxes and or cases in rooms that the contactees would walk into and see. Not just one or two. This is a common report. Now, that's advanced stuff. You're not going to see that being testified to Congress anytime soon. And there was a time when I wouldn't talk about it. But I'm inclined more and more to do that, because I do not want the contactees I want to let them know that they have not been forgotten, that they will have their day. But the political process leading to disclosure, unfortunately, has to set that aside. As we can't mention it, but it is not the focus of the political process underway. It's not in the UAP Disclosure Act, but they will have their day, but it will be after disclosure. And we will be talking about the idea of actual alien human hybrids. But I think this is really important, if we can get a handle on what we call the other kind of hybrid, the other kind of intervention, if we can establish that, in fact, the reason we're here and able to do what we do right now is because of an ET intervention using advanced genetics, untold thousands of years, well, going back probably 300 to 400,000 years, then we owe our existence to them. And therefore, we might want to be a little more circumspect of how we view them, right? And not be immediately reaching for a nuke. You know what I'm saying here? Or just generally being difficult. We're getting into some wild stuff here.
And you haven't even
fascinating though. Yeah.
You haven't even broached, and maybe you have in yourself, but to me, you haven't even broached the other aspect of our subject that we are going back and forth, just our subject in terms of ufology, the whole idea of consciousness, and not only the brain and intellectual aspects of a being, but you talk about this ability to know that there's other intelligence, whether it's in the water, it's in the air, and maybe they're not as evolved with that. But even the idea of the consciousness thing, that's a whole nother area that we continually to try to understand. And again, in a scientific sense, we don't even understand how they, if it is they, and maybe we do, and it's not me, integrate with a biological machine that they're calling a ship, and yet it is a being of some sense, a sentience or an intelligence of some sense that they're able to integrate with, whether through telepathy or their own integration. And I know I'm getting off. The point is the whole idea about who we are, what we are, and our intelligence is a subject that we need to hopefully not evolve ourselves. Maybe it is an involvement to that, but this goes in hand in my feeling about what you had said earlier. The true secret, the true obfuscation for all of this is the fact that there's so many other things that are going on that the controllers and the puppet masters, or the people who believe that they have the better interests of our populace in sight, don't want us to know any of these things. And so I know I'm getting off on a tangent of that. I want to come back, though. I know we can go down this hole. I want to come back to not only your Paradigm Research Institute, but a couple of the projects, and then even the disclosure and the citizen, because I think there's a lot of stuff that you're doing in terms of advocacy there. Let me ask you a question. I know you created the paradigm early on. What is Project Shift Storm? What is that?
Look, that was and that's kind of up there. It's one of the things I did. That was in the very early stages of that UAP disclosure first run.
Did that also go back to the citizens hearing stuff in the early 2000s?
No.
That wasn't an early thing? Okay.
The citizen hearing was 2013.
Right. And
that was my biggest project, and that was the most funding I ever got. I haven't even come close to that since. When the UAP Disclosure Act was introduced by Schumer in 2023, he brought it up about 30 some days after Grush testified. That was no coincidence.
Right.
It was a big deal, and it is still a big deal. And so that bill, probably because of the heat, not the heat, but the interest that the Grush testimony had created, which really set things alight there. We were really cooking. Yeah. That bill got slipped into the Senate version of the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. And the reason they do that is because if you can get it in that NDAA, it's a pretty important bill. It's got to get passed.
Yeah.
And so it might just have a better chance of getting through. Okay. Yeah. This is standard politics. Well, we learned pretty quickly. Well, not right away, but we soon learned that was a bridge too far, and that major pushback was underway, that people were contacting high-level people in the House, demanding that bill be gutted or changed or whatever. There was a heavy-duty focus on the eminent domain issue, which is one of the reasons why we were certain the lobbyists and representatives were working from and being compelled by the defense contractors. So this is the game. It's a serious game. It's a hardball. And so we all responded to various ways, Danny Sheehan and others. My little thing was to create a little quick thing called the Shift Storm, in which I put up a page educating people to the fact that one way to reach the members of Congress, besides sending a letter or doing the old email thing, is that you can Twitter tag them. And so the Shift Storm is about how you can Twitter tag certain people that were directly involved in the bill at that time, with your desire to see that bill passed.
Right. And
I listed all their Twitter handles and all that kind of stuff, or X handles, and that was Shift Storm. Obviously, the bill was gutted, and so that's just now a project that I did once, many projects. It's no longer active.
But the reason why I bring it up, because the whole point of it and where we're at today, because the question now is, it's been 2 years since, or in its third cycle, if you will, this NDAA cycle. And we know in December, it's going to ultimately be signed. And I know that there's...
Whoa.
No. The NDAA is a bigger...
Will be signed, but the the Disclosure Act is...
Right. No, it is. And that's where I was going with it. So we know the bill is ultimately going to be signed, but what aspects of it relate to what we're talking about is clearly diminished. So as far as I know, and here's my question, and I know there's been some comments back and forth, and there was certain things added, even though the disclosure part was not added to it, there was certain things added, and then what was added, and then where do you think, is it done? Is it died? Or are we going to have to recreate it or call it something else? Because that's how it happens in your circle of life and work. So
here's what I believe is the case, and it's actually non-trivial. In other words, I'm not as upset about this as others. The UAP Disclosure Act was called the UAP Disclosure Act. The word disclosure was in there for a reason. That was Chuck Schumer's way of letting us know he's paying attention. All right. And I hope he was using the capital D version. That's the one I came up with nearly almost 30 years ago now, 28 years ago, that it's a proper noun. It is the event. It's the confirmation event. It's the confirmation from the president. The other stuff, which is going on all the time, is small d disclosure. MUFON has been in the small d disclosure business since it was formed in 1969. But capital D is another matter. I hope that's what he meant. So the bill was it. It had everything. That bill had everything. The only thing that you might have added was additional add-on witness protection stuff, which you can't have too much of that. But there was some, and there was some in previous bills. But in this case, you can't have too much. But other than that, it was the package that basically is going to bring it all out. Okay. And while it might start the process if they had passed it, but ultimately we're not going to get that much until the president confirms. But I believe that had the bill passed, confirmation from the president could have followed fairly quickly. So it was cut in half. They took the powers out. They didn't have the balls enough to take the whole thing down because the level of public interest is unprecedented. So they took the powers out and left the basic bill. They set up the archive, and some stuff has been dribbling over there into the UAP archive at our National Archive. Check it out. It's actually happening, but it's nothing that's going to shake, rattle, and roll. But still, it is there. But the powers to really go where we have to go were taken out. What happened then is that Schumer and Rounds resubmitted the exact same bill the next year. They didn't modify it to see if we could get a little something else in, meaning, maybe add another. No, they just put the exact same bill in. And when it was essentially stopped in a different way, the first time around, they put it in the NDAA and forced it to be reconciled because it was already in the bill. The second time around, they submitted it as a standalone amendment that would have to be voted outside of the bill, right? That's a different process. And this time it was stopped cold because in the amendment process, there are certain chairmen of certain committees that have the ability to put in a block. And they found that a block was put in. We never found out who it was. And so rather than just let that happen, they did a diplomatic move and said that somebody had messed up and forgot to submit it to some office on time, and therefore it won't be included. It won't be voted on. That was a strategic move, because if they had withdrawn it because of the block, that would have signaled a kind of defeat. So they said somebody screwed up and didn't deliver it. No problem. And then a year after that, of course, which is this year, they submitted the same bill again. All right. And what can I say? The message is clear. It's not really so much a defeat as a victory. It is two very powerful senators with additional backing from other senators have said, you didn't give us the bill the first time. Now we're going to do it again. You didn't pass it the second time. We're going to do it again. We're not going to submit some half-assed bill. What we have there is okay, but it isn't enough. And so they submitted it 3 times. The third time it went in as an amendment, and it actually got carried over to the House because they got a couple of House people to sponsor it, co-sponsor it. And Representative Burleson, who I like very much, and I think is one of the most important people in this issue now, agreed to be one of the co-sponsors. However, once it was agreed to be sponsored, then it has to go into the markup. And so here's the deal with that. Every single potential amendment to the NDAA has to be viewed by staff on the markup process. There were 1,000. And so they sort of got down to that bill and went, no, it's not good enough. And so it was shut down there. Believe me, it wasn't about good enough or bad enough. It was like, that's how they could stop it this time. Right. They're going to resubmit it again next year. You can count on that. And so I'm pretty high on this. I am very, very much impressed. And the other thing that's worth noting, and I can't say this enough, that in this whole process in which this bill was submitted 3 times and cut in half and then rejected here, rejected there, the only time that it became a bit partisan, and I don't think this was a good idea. It was a mistake. However, When Rounds and Schumer went in and read in a statement to the Senate, nobody was there, but they read it in the Senate, so it went into the congressional record, and basically said, this is the first time around when it was cut in half. We're disappointed in our Republican friends that they had pushed back, because it was primarily coming from the Republicans, but not all. That was about the only time a partisan thing entered into this, in spite of the fact there is a bipartisan holy war. I mean, a hyper-partisan holy war going on literally while all of this is happening.
Right.
This is remarkable. And it is one of the things that should give everybody optimism. This is a nonpartisan issue. They can work together on this in spite of the fact they're trying to slit each other's throat. And so that gives me hope.
So, since we're talking about that, so where is the disclosure movement at now, in your opinion, too? And then what do you think of this idea of the catastrophic disclosure idea? And is that something actually good for us, or is it really something bad? So
what is good for us or something bad? What you're referring to?
Catastrophic disclosure movement. Yeah.
Well, generally anything catastrophic is probably not good for you.
No, I understand, but I mean, it's
you mean like the day after disclosure, kind of, where the president comes out and the stock markets crash and everything goes down?
I've been asked this question many times.
Well, the idea is this, that the government doesn't disclose, and so everybody just opens the floodgates with information that's irrefutable, and that it saturates people, it saturates all aspects of life, as opposed to shifting.
I just don't think they would ever be able to show anything irrefutable. With AI, I would not believe anything that I saw on the news or the computer. I would just never. And I think that people that want to believe will still believe, and the people that don't want to will just say, no way, that's AI.
That's a thought.
Let me get back to your first question.
Okay.
Look, the trouble, and I've been asked this many times, the trouble I have with catastrophic disclosure, it's a messy term. It's a bad term. All right. It has too many definitions. Everybody, and people have different definitions of the term, which is definitely not helpful in language. You need to have a relatively defined definition, or communication becomes. But in terms of being part of the activist movement and so forth, it's not helpful. Any terminology that's not clear, which is why I came up with the idea of capital D disclosure, truth embargo, and so forth. It's not helpful. Now, one definition of catastrophic disclosure from the government's perspective is disclosure, right? Disclosure is catastrophic. If the president comes out with permit, that's a catastrophe for the managers of the truth embargo and those that have invested so many of their years in maintaining it. Another form of catastrophic disclosure is one that is for ET forced. In other words, it's a force majeure. They put a couple of starships over Washington, D.C. and Moscow, and that's the ball game. And that would be viewed as catastrophic, and rightly so. So that's another definition. Another definition of catastrophic disclosure is that it's not done responsibly, that it's chaotic, and it doesn't have the proper legislative structure. It doesn't have the people in Congress on board, and so forth and so forth. And maybe not the White House, or whatever the hell. It's a mess. It's not responsible. I totally agree. That would be, well, I don't think catastrophic, but it would be messy and not productive. Well, the whole reason why we are having these bills passed and we've sent these offices up and all this legislation and hearings are going on is to create the very structure that allows for responsible disclosure, which is what is meant in the UAP Disclosure Act as a controlled disclosure plan. A lot of people jumped at that when they said, controlled disclosure plan. What they meant was simply this. It has to be in a controlled and responsible way. We're not going to be dragging stuff out on the White House lawn to go through like a rummage sale, right? Or putting it up for sale. We're going to do it in a responsible way, but we will do it. And eventually you will get it all. And so catastrophic disclosure is an irresponsible disclosure process. And then there's the fourth definition, the one I hate the most. And that is, even if we have a responsible disclosure of the information, the whole thing, right? Even the tough stuff, right? The human hybrids, alien hybrids, the contact, the abductions, the massive secrecy, the abuse of funding power, and God knows what else, all of the various things the government has done, that if we get that, it's going to be so upsetting that people are going to get very angry at their government for lying. Yeah, I think they already are. Or people are going to give up religion, go crazy, start taking drugs. They already are. They'll stop believing the government. They don't believe the government. And so
it's a trust issue. It is.
So it's like, I'm saying it can't get worse. It can only get better. And so again, all of these definitions are interesting, but the term is being thrown around like a ping pong ball. And so it does. I don't work with it. Okay.
So let me ask you this, Steve. So this is the world according to Steve. Okay? Go with me on this for a second. The world according to Steve. How does Steve? And it's a good discussion. You tell us how you think it should come about. Disclosure.
Okay. The reason why anybody should give a damn about the world according to Steve is because I'm a political activist. Right? And I'm not a scientist. If I was a scientist, we wouldn't have this conversation, right? But I'm an activist because there is something worth being an activist about. And in order to be an activist, you have to be able to project a sense of what is going on. Even though you don't know it down to the granular level, you have to be able to provide people a sense of what is going on so they can make a decision as to whether they want to support the movement and get to a prize. And every activist movement has to do this, right? The idea that in order to be an activist and get people to do something, you have to be a Ken Burns and deliver them a 50-hour documentary research with tens and tens of millions of dollars that shows everything that's happening in great detail. And you can go, nah, you can't do that. And in this case, it's even worse. Why? Because the government has denied that everything that you're activating about isn't even there. And so you have a problem. That is why so few people really devote their life to being an activist in this issue. And it's only now starting to become a thing. And so what I had to do is to try to come up with a picture that had a high probability of being relatively accurate to give people a sense of why they should care. And so the issue, according to Steve, is roughly this. Some of it is important, some of it is less important, and I don't talk about the less important, but ETs have been around forever, different ones at different times, including the ancient world. Things kind of went slow for a while, hundreds of years of not much happening, right? And then all of a sudden, in the mid-20th century, kaboom, activity explodes, saucers and craft all over the place being seen back in a time when we didn't have so many cameras. It was triggered, I'm pretty sure, by the dropping of the bombs in Japan. And then, of course, the fact that it was clear we were going to build them, we were going to make them, and we were going to put them on missiles. That was very clear. And so we entered the age of the nuclear era, the nuclear war era, the era of mutual assured destruction. And that was a big deal to them. There was a reason why that was very important. And so they started to escalate their activity, their presence, do things like, escalate contact. There might not have been that much contact in the previous 200 years. All of a sudden, people are getting contacted, abducted, what have you. They're turning off nuclear weapons. They're showing up all over the place. They're getting, like over Washington, D.C. in 52, there have been a number of flaps. And so there is now an intense modern engagement for a reason with an ET agenda attached that seems to be very much connected to the potential for destruction that we will inflict on ourselves, the destruction we're inflicting on the environment, right? That is going to lead to all kinds of very awful outcomes. In other words, we hit the wall. They knew that we had hit the wall in a number of ways. And while there was 8 billion of us, things were not going to end well. And we were going to end up doing enormous damage, setting ourselves back hundreds of years, destroying the environment in a lot of ways. And at this point, they felt that was a waste of a good civilization. And so they have been encouraging in various ways us engaging their reality, right? They put down crop circles year after year in the same field, so everybody will come watch it happen, in a sense. That's a message, right? They're not cloaking themselves. The people are allowed to have their memory suddenly come forward. So there is something happening here that's leading somewhere. And that is, again, this issue, according to Steve. Where is it leading? Everything says to me it's leading towards confirmation. Not ET force majeure disclosure, but confirmation from our heads of state. There's a reason why it would start with one and not two or three holding a party, right? Trying to get 10 heads of state to do this together would leak within a day. And so it's going to be one head of state that goes first, makes history, wins a Nobel Prize, whatever, right? And then the other heads of state will follow, in which case the world now has had confirmation they're not alone, and that virtually everything they've been hearing from reasonably responsible sources about this phenomena is true. And then we start diving in as a civilization, as a society worldwide, studying everything about it. Everything that you guys have done and every other organization has done, the research, the thousands of books, the hundreds of documentaries, everything, and then what the government reveals, until we just saturate human civilization with ET stuff and knowledge. And at that point, open contact is responsible as well. Open contact is where this is leading. Open contact is another thing altogether. And it is in the era, not of post-disclosure, which is incredibly important and coming, but post-open contact, where the real rubber meets the road, where they have the payoff. And that payoff can be described very simply. Like other nations, we have watched and dealt with, certainly in the 20th century, as they try to evolve to keep up with the greatest technological explosion and population explosion in history. A lot of those nations needed help. Otherwise, they were absolutely screwed. And there's still a number of those that need a lot of help from other nations with more tech and more money. Jamaica is about to be a nation that's going to need a lot of help because it's about to be obliterated. All right. Yeah. And so open contact is when another civilization or civilizations help, because we have to have it. We cannot get through this without it.
Are you saying that that's the precipice event?
That is where this has all been going for a long time. We are in a situation as a global civilization where we are over our head and we're not going to be able to dig out of this hole by ourselves. You like to think that if we could magically change about 10,000 variables out there and about a couple of hundred really major ones, maybe we could get there, but we're out of time. There's 13,000 nukes ready to launch, right? And they're getting, the missile systems are getting better, right? The chaos is getting better. We haven't got the time. And so I believe this is a intervention where the human civilization is being allowed to come to a nice party. And when we get there, there's no party, but there's like 10 civilizations sitting on couches saying, take a seat there in the middle. We need to talk to you. I'm making a joke, but the point is, I believe this is where it's going.
So
this is where it must go. And that's what that is the issue, according to Steve.
So it's a forced event because of something that's going to happen, that's going to be undeniable, that's going to make those who are in positions of authority and power, that in some case, somebody's going to make a decision to come clean and then therefore move forward with it. Because we all know, is that what, again, this is the world according to Steve. So this is your.
But yeah, I got to correct you, Richard. You got
okay,
that.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead, please.
Here is how it's unfolding. And the ETs, apparently, this is what they want. Because they could do catastrophic disclosure anytime they want to. Is that the civilization has to self-acknowledge their presence formally, right? Not a couple of people, in a coffee shop.
They don't have to. You would think that they should, but they don't have to.
Again,
it may be such an issue of danger that they are forced themselves in order to save the lesser developed or thinking people for a greater good. So I don't disagree with you. I'm just talking. We're just conversing.
Well, but let me clarify. The idea and the plan, I believe, is that we need to self-disclose formally. All the nations, the whole world gets it. They know it's true, and then they immediately start learning about everything that we've already acquired and more. This learning curve, 2 years tops, is all we need, because of the fact that this is not 1947. We have a massive global neurostructure here where everybody can talk to everybody, and you can, well, whatever. We have the ability to self-educate ourselves, take the whole planet to school, and get a PhD on ET stuff in 2 years or less. And then open disclosure can take place in a responsible way. And then that is the ultimate endpoint of this, because open disclosure leads to what I believe is a cooperative effort to solve the problems we have with help from a more advanced, more technologically sophisticated civilization or civilizations. And that's how we get out of this mess. Now, if we continue to continue to dance to this music, right, and not sit down, if we keep pushing it away, if the opposition to disclosure continues somehow to drag this out, in spite of the overwhelming pressure that's building on them, at some point, the ETs may decide enough is enough, and they force majeure this, right? Now, if we launch some nuclear weapons,
or not.
Because, well, again, I'm giving you according to Steve.
No.
According to Steve, there's no or not.
No. Well, and I'm just adding the idea that this current civilization is 12,500 years old. There's been previous civilizations that have come up. I'm just saying somebody may decide in those positions of authority in the ET world, let's let it start again. I'm just thinking as an idea, as that's where I was going with it.
It's one thing for the civilization or group in a Mesopotamian area 8,000 years ago to get wiped off the face of the earth by another group, start over. Now this is different. We are full global spacefaring civilization. It's a different deal.
I don't have a problem with that, but here's my thought. You're assuming that those old civilizations were wiped out. Nobody said that they didn't get enough technology, that they live on another planet. I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm not saying you're saying.
I'm not. I'm not down with that. I don't believe there's been any high tech civilizations prior to ours, even before 12,000 years ago. But it's cool. It's interesting. It's fine. But I'm just not there. I'm there with what I've just told you. And again, if we don't disclose, then at some point they may lose their patience. But but there may be another factor here, and this is this is why the movie A House of Dynamite that just landed is got to be watched by every living person in this world, certainly every American.
I agree.
This is a message delivered all these years. How many years? 36, almost 51 years. And wait a minute, 61 years after Failsafe. Now we have another fail-safe that's even more realistic, even more intense in a sense, though fail-safe was incredibly intense. We're going to launch some missiles here. Now, at that point, one might predict that, okay, we launch some missiles, they shut them down. They basically just drop them into the ocean and say, okay, you silly, simple-minded jackasses. Okay, you won't disclose. You finally launch these missiles. Enough is enough. So now here we are. And you're not going to launch any more. And now we're gonna get together. We're gonna work with you. You're gonna fix this stuff because you're just really an embarrassment to the whole goddamn galaxy. That's possible. It's not an unrealistic possibility, but who wants to roll the dice on that? Right? It's also possible that ultimately, if we launch those weapons and we essentially make a good deal of the world uninhabitable, create unimaginable suffering and to slaughter, that it would be like, okay, you did it. We're gonna head home now. We're gonna go back. We'll be back in a while, maybe 500 years, 1,000 years, and see how you're doing. That is also a possibility. Time to them may not be as tight as it is for us. 1,000 years to them may be no big deal. So I don't know. I can't rule it out, right? But that could be what happened. If we launch, that is going to be the seminal moment. This is what we've been leading to since 1945, after we tested at Trinity and dropped it on, and killed 200,000 mostly non-combatant Japanese people, and confirmed to the galaxy, we will kill anything. We will kill anything. We will kill ourselves, our uncles, our aunts, our own people, we'll kill all the planets. There's not all the animals. There is nothing humans won't kill because we haven't quite evolved beyond, certain kind of strictures. We confirmed it that day. And so if we launch the nukes tomorrow, it is the logical outcome of these last 80 some years. And it would be like, okay, you made it clear. You just can't let that go. We have a big galaxy to cruise around in. We'll see you in 2,000 years. If you make it again, maybe we'll give you another shot. I don't know. But that is how I view the launch of nuclear missiles, if it comes in the context of this larger picture. Now, obviously, the people working over at the Pentagon and the people working in our national defense and in our SAC bases and so forth don't have that larger picture. They're not allowed to have that larger picture. There are a few that do, who are retired, and they happen to be what I believe will be hopefully the next witnesses before Congress. I'm talking about Bob Salas, and I'm talking about Robert Jameson, if his health holds up, or David Shindeli, or Jacobs, as well as some of the security guys that were at the bases when the missiles were shut down. They have this larger view to some degree. They've spent years thinking about it. But the ones that are in the missile silos right now, probably not. And so that's where activism comes in. And journalists, and the journalists like Ross Coulthard and others, and Danny Sheen and the other activists, all of this is coming in to try to provide this larger picture in which to cast the current situation in which.
You froze just a bit. That's okay.
You were freezing too, so maybe he'll come right back.
Yeah, it probably. I can see it. Steve, you froze just a bit, buddy. Maybe we can get you. It's probably going to reset in just a second, but I
think it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, okay. He'll log back in a second.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all fascinating. Like, I love studying archaeology and ancient history, right. and this is the first time Homo sapiens have been the only humanoid on the planet in the last 13,000 years or so, since whatever that latest catastrophe is. And also, if you study, I mean, an asteroid's going to hit us at some point and destroy 90% of the life on this. That's what happens every so many million years, So I don't know what aliens are thinking about us and our nuclear weapons, which, yes, but also at some point we're going to all be destroyed anyway. Like, it's just going to happen.
Well, you know what, and so here's the other thing, and I know Steve was maybe not wanting that, but the belief that maybe at some point they would come and have some kind of catastrophic, whatever. I mean, the idea is that if we can evolve ourselves high enough and significant enough, let me see if I can see where it's at, that we can, not outlive that, but sort of evolve ourselves enough that maybe we can predict or prevent or actually maybe move out from this particular world. Now, not with our violence, but with our evolvedness in terms of how we. Right. It really is, and this is why the conscious thing is such a big thing. It's moving past our trivial, warlike.
Which we've done for as long as
right,
kind of erect us. We know your screen's orange again, like it was before. I love it.
So,
do you want to talk?
Right, you can keep coming. We only got a couple more minutes anyway. But the point is it's a very telling scenario or groups of scenarios about, will we save ourselves? Will it take an extraterrestrial civilization who are highly evolved than we are to have some sort of event, whatever you want to call it, that says, hey, wake up, we're here. But the one thing that you said, CJ, that was important, you have to agree or believe. You have to have that thought and feeling about where we're at and where we're going. And so maybe that's what I was talking about. I mean, I don't know, the idea about just the consciousness, because if you don't see your brother and sister, your neighbor, as you see yourself, the golden rule, right? This is the whole idea of the golden rule. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Right. Not if they love you or if maybe this, love them the way you would want to be loved. So you're supposed to treat somebody the way you would want to be treated, not how they treat you, not what they do to you. And this is the idea of this belief that maybe they'll come and save us. And I'm not saying that we don't need any help. Big brother, mentors, all that kind of stuff. And I'm good with that. But I also believe that there is a lot of people in this world that are evolving themselves in terms of that kind of thinking. But is it enough? Are we, is it enough to
change the outcome? To
get us where Steve wants, that, this, and it should be, you're not going to tell your little son, I'm not going to tell my daughter and my son when they were little, all about how life and death, you're going to let them evolve. You're going to let them grow. You're going to have teaching moments. You're going to let them see things for themselves. You're going to let them fall. You're going to let them, whatever. And that's really the way it is. And if he needs to step up real quick and learn something real fast, a traumatic event may happen that causes that. And I know that.
Had a lot of that. Yeah.
And by the way, trauma is part of our learning curve. I mean, it really, really is.
And it makes you tough, though.
Well, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad.
No,
well, you say, well, it is bad trauma. No, sometimes it makes us reset. Sometimes it makes us refocus or rethink. And maybe more so than them coming and saving us, and I don't mean this in a negative, but sometimes traumatic events. And for instance, my wife's friend recently got information. I mean, she's not very old, that, there's a growth and it's probably cancer. And now all of a sudden this mortality thing changes your thinking and your values. And sometimes in growing as a species, we need to see it from that way. It's not about them being our parents and teaching us. It's about us having our own power and our own say so about how we're going to be. And it really is that. So it's just a thought as we go.
So Steve, you can't change your orange screen, but you can talk. So how do you want to wrap this up? Give us some closure.
You can't put me back on video.
I don't know. I just see the orange screen that we saw earlier.
Well, I'm waiting to be brought back in.
You're in the room with us, but the screen is orange.
Interesting. Hang on.
We can hear you. The audience can hear you.
And it's okay. Steve, we're almost out. So we want to give you an opportunity. We were talking about some serious stuff, and we really appreciate your thoughts. We only got about 10 minutes left, and we almost got you there, but maybe we'll get you. So I want people to, this is for me. So besides what drives you, what's your passion? And then, what do you do for rest and fun and entertainment? Because all that work you do and all that energy that you have, imagine you're bouncing all over the place all the time. And so what do you do for rest, fun, entertainment? Tell us.
This may sound strange. I work 7 days a week.
It doesn't sound strange. I would have guessed
every day. I work 7 days a week, usually till midnight.
This is fun and entertainment.
There is nothing else. Yeah. Now, I do occasionally watch some football, and I got some Netflix. But the point is that it's all I do. Look, we all die. All right. So fine. Technically, in that sense, depending upon, and I'm not religious at all, that's it. Right. So why get riled up about anything? That's a good point. All I can say is that I didn't ask to be born in 1947, but I got born there. I didn't ask to live through the entire era of the nuclear arms race, but that's what happened. I didn't ask to see war after war after war take place, even after World War I and World War II. I didn't ask for television and the internet to be able to show me all the human suffering in the world. Human suffering brought on by war, slaughter, what have you, executions, head chopped off, all this stuff. I didn't ask for that. But there it is. I got an appreciation for civilization. I think we can do better than we can. It would be nice if the Gen Zs had something to look forward to, right? And all I can say closes this. There is a direct tie between the extraterrestrial presence and the nuclear arms race and the invention of nuclear arms. The ETs have made that quite clear. We have got to get the nuclear shutdown witnesses in front of a committee as soon as possible. I've done everything I can there. Every member of the committee has been given the information. Even the Senate Intel Committee's got the information. He's been interviewed by Nancy Mace. He's been interviewed by Burleson. I can't get him in front of Burchett yet, but whatever. The point is, and I'm talking about him, I mean Bob Salas, who represents the other witnesses. Okay, this is the defining moment of our time. And as an activist, you just got to step into it. All right. And so we're going to have a nuclear war.
Right.
It may be that a couple of nukes will be launched and everybody will go, wait a minute, that was a mistake. Let's stand back. Let's chill. Let's don't overreact, except that is not the history here. Right. Watch a house of dynamite. Watch it and then watch it again. Ask your friends to watch it. It makes it about as clear as it can in a modern way that transcends even failsafe, that we are right on the edge. And I know that. And I know that about the ET connection. And so I have got to go and talk to people. I've got to give these interviews. I've got to put the message out. I wish I had the ability to write books and make documentaries. I do not. I don't have the funds, but I do have the ability to talk. And I have access to a lot of shows and a lot of podcasts. The one, you know, something that is, there was a time when the ET issue was simply never discussed in Congress, never discussed in campaign trails. Zero. It's now turning up. Lauren Boebert has actually made the ET issue a major part of her campaign to be returned to Congress next year. She's the first sitting member of Congress that's ever done that in history. Okay. Guess what? There is another issue that is talked about far less than the ET issue, that comes up less than the ET issue. It virtually doesn't come up at all in the campaigns, in the Senate, in the House. And you know what that issue is? The risk of nuclear war. It is simply not discussed. The treaties, all this stuff, you hear occasional mention of the START Treaty. It's not part of our politics. It's not part of the discussion. They either haven't got the guts to do it, or they think it'll cost them votes, or they're just too scared to bring it up. And so we're heading towards the abyss, and the leaders of our nation and other nations can't even mention there's an abyss ahead. And so, and I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about this until I'm blue in the face. The ET and the nuclear issue are connected. There are messages being given to us by them. They're turning our missiles off. And the people that have wanted to testify to that have been trying to get in front of the Congress for 30 years. 30 years. And no committee has yet brought them in. We finally got to the point where a couple of House members would interview Bob Salas. Meanwhile, just in the last couple of days, it's been announced that Putin has tested a nuclear missile. In other words, one that runs on nuclear power that can basically fly forever. In addition to the hypersonics, which travel so fast, there's no way to shoot them down. And is anybody talking about that? No.
Steve, I have to apologize. I'm sorry, Steve. I have to apologize to you. We're actually out of time. Okay. And you know what? But I don't want you to end on that. So will you please either give us one of your favorite quotes or a closing thought or comment before we have you go to the back so that CJ and I can finish the show?
Here's the closing thought.
Again, I know that you're passionate to go on. So give us a good quote or closing thought.
The lead activist organization now on this issue is the New Paradigm Institute. Go to newparadigminstitute.org, where you can learn how you can contact your members of Congress. You can learn a lot of things. The Citizen for Disclosure movement, they have money to do that. I do not have that kind of money. I've never been able to raise much money. Don't know why, but they have it. The New Paradigm Institute, support it, sign up, right? There are other organizations, plenty you can find. get involved, but get involved in the activism and write your member of Congress, let them know that you want disclosure, and don't be afraid to ask them why in the hell they think the nuclear threat we're under right now is not worth them talking about in Congress, to the media, or at all, right? Because, is there anything more important than these two issues, nuclear threat and the presence of ETs? And listen to what they do talk about and get angry and do something about getting them to shift to these subjects. That's what I'll leave you with.
Steve, we really appreciate you taking your day and time to come on with us. It was a really fascinating and great conversation. And I hope if we ever want you back again to tell us that about now disclosure, because you've advocated in its past, that you'd give us some time to hear you again. So thank you very much for coming on. And we hope you have a great day.
Hang out backstage. We'll see you in a second. Yeah, I'll see you at the Christmas party for sure. I already RSVP. Thanks, honey.
Bye.
Bye.
CJ, anything?
Anything. I mean, look, this is the Steve show, so I wanted to hear what Steve said. I don't agree with everything Steve says. I don't agree with everything you say. You don't agree with everything I say, but it is fascinating. And in a way, he's more hopeful than me. I've known about them since I was a small child and I saw them. So I have always lived in that reality. They've always been a reality for me. And I have also always felt that there will never be a capital D disclosure, just in my heart. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Steve's right, that does happen somehow in some way, but it doesn't. I mean, to me, I don't know, I hate the word experiencer, but we shouldn't get cut up on words. Like, so I'm an experiencer for the modern term, but it just doesn't, I feel like sometimes the disclosure movement is a distraction from the real issue, but then what is the real issue? I don't know. And the disclosure movement is tangible and it's here and it's something we can work toward. It's something. So I don't know. Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate everything you have to say. And I love talking to you. He's one of the most fascinating people to sit and talk to over a margarita or anything else. So go ahead, do your thing, Richard. Show us the slide. Talk us out.
Well, we want to say the one thing that we want everybody to say in this Tibetan proverb: the secret to living well and long is eat half, walk double, laugh triple, and love without measure. That's it, folks. See you next time.
Well, I've already messed them all up, but I'll try. I'll work it out. It's so hard for us humans. Thanks, everybody.